So, you're putting out the word, you're gathering players, and you're about to start a brand new campaign of D&D. But you're not sure how long that campaign should last. In the past, your campaigns have fallen apart after only about 8 to 10 sessions, and you're kind of worried that this might happen again. So it's 2025. You heard about this whole GMuary thing. You got really excited, and you started to put out the feelers for a new campaign. You even went out of the way, met some players, some new folks who are interested in playing D&D, and you got everyone excited about it, and now you're like, what am I running? What is this campaign going to be? How long should this campaign be? Well, that's what we're talking about today. I have an older video where I talk a little bit about session zeros and especially expectations. I'll put it up on the screen here. But in that video, I talk about how important it is to discuss things you do want to see in your campaigns and not just things that you don't want to see. Don't want to diminish the importance of things like safety tools or like hitting pause whenever things stray into territory that you're not comfortable with. But I think it's equally as important to talk about the things that we do want to see in our games. Because I've never met a table that totally has the same expectations when it comes to D&D-like games, I think it's important to discuss what kind of game you're planning on running, how deadly that game is, what are the sort of beats that you want to hit while you play. Do you care about things like social consequences or intrigue and politics, Or is this just going to be a classic hack and slash where all you do is fight monsters, get loot, and level up to get stronger, better abilities? Now, I want to pause real quick just in case any of my recent players find this video. This video has nothing to do with you guys. These are tools I picked up along the way, and I really want to present those to the greater D&D community. And so, it's not about you. So, yeah, don't listen to that part. In fact, a lot of this is about avoiding GM and player burnout on both sides of the screen. Let's say you have some players who've never played the game that you're about to run. So after you do all the things like expectations, you build your characters, it's important to start things off with a bang. I'm talking about a strong start. For example, in the session 0 I just ran for a Shadow Dark game, once everyone had their characters rolled, I went ahead and I did an introductory scene. I think that session 0s could benefit from a 1 to 2 scene introduction, a mini session as it were. In this mini session, we established the tone of the adventure we're about to go on. We established some of the mechanics of the game. We established that death can be kind of random in Shadow Dark when a giant crab slams its claw across the deck of the ship that you are traveling upon. And I knew that there was very likely going to be a death in the first session, but I wanted there to be, because I think that is in line with the dark, gritty tone of a game like Shadow Dark. And for players who may be coming from games like 5e, I don't want them to get this expectation that they need to write these long backstories with a rich history whenever their character could die on a whim. So in this example of this 1 to 2 scene session 0 mini session, whatever we want to call it, I had the players have a big battle, they got to introduce their characters, and then the boat crashed on a mysterious island. That mysterious island is the adventure we're going to run, Hot Springs Island. And this mini session allowed for 2 other things to happen. It means people get to rolling dice immediately and get to see what their character feels like and what the game feels like. But it also left things on a cliffhanger. They saw this volcanic island in the distance with the mountain rising high above a mysterious jungle. So now we have a hook for the very next session, and we have a reason that players can be excited to come back and play again. And there is a sort of loose third lesson to be gained here, and it's something that's going to lean into the next point of this video, which is finding your people, a sort of vetting process. I know a lot of people don't like that word and may bounce off this idea, but if you want longevity in your campaigns, it's important to find the people that you want to play with, that you like running for as the GM, and to make sure they like the style that you're running. Because here's the thing, we all have so many different expectations when it comes to D&D, right? Like, maybe if you've only ever watched Critical Role and you've never seen something like old school games, and you've never played like Gauntlet on the old Nintendo or Sega or whatever. That's a weird example. No one's going to click with that today, but that's what popped in my head, so I'm using it. then you might not be ready for a hack and slash adventure of just deep dungeon delves, monster slaying, and running away from fights rather than standing your ground. And if your session 0 mini session allows you to get a vibe for what the game is going to be like, how lenient or strict that GM style is, whether or not they're able to bend on rules and make it more about the fun of the table than the letter of the law, that's an important thing to figure out in the first, 90 minutes of meeting the people you're going to be playing with. So that brings us into point number 2 of this video, something I'm calling mini arcs. The idea here is that regardless of how many months you plan on playing this game together, how many sessions you think this will span, break it up into something like mini arcs. And the idea here is that a mini arc is somewhere between, I'll just say, 4 to 8 sessions of play. So if you think about printed adventures, something like Sailors on the Starless Sea, maybe you're a really killer GM and you have the greatest pacing in the world, and you actually complete that adventure in one night somehow, then this isn't for you. You've already got it figured out. This is for everybody else. But the idea is that, like, running Sailors on the Starless Sea, a great introductory DCC adventure, you are probably going to take 2 to 4 sessions, a mini arc. And when that arc is completed, you have a natural ramp, an on and off point, where players can decide whether or not they're enjoying this campaign, the style you're presenting, the group of people they're playing it with. This avoids awkwardness of people just mysteriously dropping out for random reasons or life things. I think having mini arcs is a great way to enable players to be able to join games whenever they want to participate in it, and leave games or exit games whenever they're just not having fun, or, let's face it folks, life happens. I'm going to assume that most of you watching this video are adults like me, and sometimes life gets busy. Sometimes you change jobs, your schedule ends up being way more of a mental load than you thought it would be. Maybe you have a kid or you get married or something, and everything shifts. Maybe your town gets hit by a natural disaster, and for months on end, it's not like it used to be. So I think having these natural places for people to join or exit your game is an easy way to avoid table burnout. Burnout doesn't just happen on the GM side of the screen. There are outside stresses that cause you to not feel up to the task of playing or running games. It's much easier of a commitment to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to sign on for this first arc. You said it's probably going to be like 4 to 6 sessions. I think I can definitely do that. But beyond that, I'm getting a new job in February and things might change. January is over, folks. It's time for new things. So I'm just rambling here, but I'm saying this all to say this is a really good way to let your players have some agency in when they enter or leave a game. I've actually started to refer to this idea in my own head as chapters, because just like in games or stories and books, chapters are where natural shifts happen in the progression of the story, where we change point of views, perspectives, or, there's just a change in overall tone to the story. And maybe sometimes you're really enjoying a book, but you get to the end of a chapter and you put it down and you think, I'm going to read something else for a bit. And that's totally fine too. Here's a really cool thing about running your game in mini arcs or chapters, is that if you get bored of that genre, that game, that style, you could pick something else up for a little bit and say, hey, I'm running a cyborg mini arc. I've been really digging this idea of cyberpunk stuff, and I'm getting a little burnout on classic fantasy. So if you guys want to play, I'm taking a pause as this chapter ends. We're going to play something else for a few chapters instead. And here's the true beauty of the idea of mini arcs for a lot of games or campaigns. If you still want to have that really long overarching plot that goes through a year or 2 year long campaign, you can just interweave those mini arcs until they make a grand story that your players who are dedicated to your table went all the way through. It's that easy. You could even do something like flashbacks or flash forwards that are different games entirely, And maybe you're still running those same characters in those different games, but this is a way to say, like, we're still involved in that world. We're playing a different system, just trying out a mini arc, wanted to try this system. We'll come back to the other one. We're putting it on pause for like 3 or 4 weeks. There you go. And while I'm here talking about these ideas of player on and off ramps, things like chapters or mini sessions and mini arcs, here's my personal pitch for a Wes Marches style game, because that's what I'm doing right now, and that's what's on my mind, so I'm going to talk about it for a second. If you're not familiar with what a Wes Marches game is, there are plenty of videos out there that can tell you about them. I'll probably link one right here for right now. But let's just say that Wes Marches, in essence, is a pickup group style game. You ever went out to play, I'm going to probably lose everyone here with this example, but you ever go out to play something like basketball, and it's just whoever shows up plays? Well, that's the idea of Wes Marches. The story is centered around the company rather than specific characters, and so everyone has a shared idea of what's unfolding in the world. You usually connect through a forum space, something like a Discord, and you talk about what your characters did or learned that session. Then, when everyone comes back to meet the next time, it doesn't matter if it's those same characters, because the story isn't intrinsically tied to those specific characters. It's more about the overarching plots that are unfolding in the world, exploring a strange world, and just getting to play whenever you can play. Because another factor in Wes Marches is that, in theory, you get your players to decide when the games happen, taking the onus off of the GM and putting scheduling in the ball in their field, park. This is why I don't do sports analogies, because I'm bad at them. But stick with me here, because it's never a bad idea to just go ahead and say, like, we're going to run this Tuesday at this time, and that's fine. You can still do that if your group is not very good about setting a time, but you're going to get to play more games because the plot isn't centered on any specific one character, and so when that player has a life event and they don't show up, you can still run games, roll dice with your friends, and have fun talking in funny voices. I think everyone should at least try a Wes Marches game. It's a bit of a departure from a lot of the more modern ideas of games, and honestly, we need to get away from these 300-page books that just instantly burn out GMs. I don't know why that's become the de facto method, but I don't think it's sustainable. There are a lot of cars driving by today. Sorry if you can pick that up on the mic. And I said this earlier, but let's face it, folks, we're all adults. Life happens, things change, and we don't need to fault our players for that. We should be setting ourselves up for success by creating formats that don't depend on everyone to be there every session. Okay, well, I know that was a rambly, hot mess, and maybe I didn't make all the points I wanted to make, but I hope that someone out there gleaned something from this ridiculous video. It's starting to rain here a little bit, and it's getting a little busier too, so there's people looking at me strangely, and I think I'm going to move on soon. So I just want to say thank you guys for your continued support. I really appreciate it. Please share my videos, especially my newer podcast videos. I think because they're such a different format, they're not going to really take off on YouTube right away. So any amount of effort behind those is supremely appreciated. And if you haven't seen them, go check out the Quantum Ogre Cast, where I'm going to be doing interviews with different luminaries in the TTRPG sphere, different dungeon tubers a lot of the time, and different designers and things like that. And we're just going to have very casual, topical conversations about TTRPGs. So go check out this video where I met with Trent from J-Face Games, and then I just discussed some random topics, because honestly, that video was a bit of a mess, but that's on me because I didn't nail down the topic to begin with. It was awesome. I had a great time. Trent is awesome and super easy to talk to. He's also writing a killer game that looks really exciting. I'll try to put up something here for it if I can. And yeah, so check out Quantum Ogre Cast wherever you find podcasts, hopefully at least on Spotify if not. And follow me on Substack, because I'm pretty sure my podcast goes up there as well. And if you have ideas, topics that you want to hear discussed, then send them to the email linked below, and we will eventually cover those, or I'll have a week that's slower and I'll just do a mailbag kind of week. So stay tuned for that kind of stuff. I really appreciate all of you guys that consistently watch the channel. If you're subscribed, it does help get these ideas and these thoughts out to more and more folk, which is the important part. I don't care about views. I don't care about clicks. I'm not making really anything off of YouTube. What I care about is making sure good information gets out there to players and game masters alike. My hope with a lot of my videos is to make the Dungeon Tuber sphere and the TTRPG space a better, more educated, for lack of a better term, more informed space, and that we have good ideas perpetuated here, not just clickbait stuff, which I get it. Clickbait gets views, so I probably did it in this video. I have no idea yet. This is past Jorben talking. Anyway, I gotta run, gotta get to work. You guys are awesome. As always, remember, make mistakes, choose chaos, and most importantly, have fun. I have scoured to the heart of the archives deep, and traveled to the top of the cinder cloud peaks, and forded the everplains for the answers I seek. So beware of the realms where you meddle, for the fates can be fickle when the dice settle.